Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are today. I hope your week has been going great and you're doing well so far. I can see people are still streaming in. But I think we can begin just to save on time and to ensure that we are within the time allocated for this webinar. So I think I will start with a round of introduction. My name is Nora Thuo, a project and programs lead over at PAAN, and I'm joined with my colleagues, or rather the panelists for this session. We have Maureen, we have Thomas, and we have Yannick. So for just a brief introduction of who they are and who you'll be listening to. So we have Yannick, who's a founder and CEO. He's founder of Kasi Insight, which is an Africa's leading decision intelligence company, which empowers business leaders and entrepreneurs to make crucial decisions with confidence. So Yannick is a winner of several awards, including Best Research Paper Award at MSRA, which is based in Kenya, Quartz Africa Innovator Award, which is based in Nigeria, and Great Future List nominee. So prior to starting Kasi, the company, Yannick had over 15 years of experience in banking in North Africa and in Africa as a whole. So he considers himself a pioneer of African-based data. So Yannick, we look forward to hearing from you and gaining a bit of insight or a lot of insight from you from this session. Maybe I'll let you introduce yourself a bit so we can hear your voice ahead of the session.
Thank you, Nora, for the introduction. I don't have much to add to that introduction other than the fact that I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invite. I'm looking forward to the conversation and the questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next on our panel today is Maureen Akachim. So she's a respected and results-driven media and communications professional who's currently serving as the managing director at MediaSeal. With over 20 years of experience driving strategic growth, she has earned a reputation as a trusted communications advisor to senior business leaders who are navigating complex decisions. So she is also a full member of the Advertising Regulatory Council, which is based in Nigeria, and an alumna of the Lagos Business School, where she completed the Senior Management Program, which is the SMP. Her academic background is in mathematics and statistics with a focus of operational research, which reflects her enduring love for data and analytical thinking. So she has, years of experience and in data and what analytical thinking, which is how you should think about data. So she's currently pursuing a professional certification in business analysis from the International Institute of Business Analysis. Maureen, please introduce yourself so that we can hear your voice.
Nora, thank you so much for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I'm a panelist, but I'm also here to learn and interact with everyone. You are welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. We also have Thomas, who is the lead data-driven performance strategist at WeFuse, where he helps shape how they approach growth, analytics, and modern performance marketing. With 15 years of experience, 15 plus years of experience across agency, corporate, and SaaS environments, his work centers on turning data and technology into measurable outcomes for all their clients. So he started his career in SEO and paid media back in 2009 and became an early adopter of Facebook ads in 2012. And even from Facebook now through all the other platforms that have grown since then. And he's later moved into SaaS marketing to support a high impact startup to enterprise merger. So he returned to agency life at WeFuse, and which has allowed him to bring that whole experience together in a more strategic and integrated way. So for his strengths, his strengths lie in data-led problem solving, which he's supported by WeFuse Analytics, and AI-driven optimization and workflow automation. So for Thomas, we look forward to hearing from you. Please introduce yourself and let us hear your voice today.
everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar here. I'm very excited to learn from these esteemed panelists. I think there's a lot that we're all going to get from this. So thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to our discussions.
Great, thank you so much. So just before we begin the session, I would like to just give a brief introduction to PAAN. So PAAN, for those who may have heard it recently or may not know about it, so PAAN is a bold alliance of independent agencies across Africa and the diaspora. So what PAAN is doing is it's bringing together agencies from different countries across the African continent into one network to transform fragmentation and transform it into unity and potential into a global influence. So we know agencies are full of a lot of skills that are necessary in this day and age. There's a lot of growth mindset. There's also a lot of insights in terms of marketing, communication, PR, even now AI, and how we can bring together AI into the agency world. So PAAN is a network that's bringing all this together for agencies to collaborate, to network, to think together strategically and also share information. So we welcome you to PAAN if this is your first session and webinar. And throughout the session, we'll be putting a few questions and polls in the poll section. So please interact with us. You are also free to use the Q&A section for you to ask any questions that you get as the speakers are going ahead with their session. So please interact and let us know if you have any question and if you need any clarity as we continue. Yeah, so with that said and done, I believe I will start with what you should be expecting from this session. So what you are to expect, you expect a dynamic conversational session with from our panelists here, and then the session will also be recorded. So don't worry if you need to refer to this session after this 1 hour, 1 hour 15 minutes. So we'll send this session to your emails, your registered emails, for you to look at and to listen in and also share with your networks and other team members within your organization. So without further ado, I will start with the panel discussion. So the first theme that I want to highlight is the data reality in agencies today. So as of 2026, what do agencies mostly, where do agencies mostly get stuck with working on data? And how do we even collect data? How do we for the data that we collect in the agencies, are we collecting too much data, or are we even collecting the wrong data that we need? And what is the biggest gap between reporting, analysis, and making the decision from this data that we have? So I think with this data reality, I think it will help us position and know where we sit at this time and how we can, move strategically to either, create better systems to collect data, or even just, how we think around data and how we use data to inform our decision. So just to open it up, I would like to maybe open it up to Thomas to start us off. So maybe you can just take us through the reality of data as it is as of today, and, how we as agencies are going about it.
Nora, I see that agencies are collecting an awful lot of data. In fact, I think the amount of data that we're collecting is growing every single day. There are more touch points, the journeys and funnels get longer, we're collecting more tiny little pieces of data. So I don't believe collection is really a problem. I think we've probably, in fact, got too much data. So the biggest problem is what data matters to agencies and what data matters to owners. So it's that integration piece that is missing in this puzzle. You get data from different platforms, you get websites, you get social platforms, you get performance. So all that data is siloed out into different sections. So collecting the right data and integrating it with each other to inform more accurate metrics that can drive decision is the biggest blocker that I believe is in a lot of agencies and a lot of businesses these days, whether they've got an internal agency working for them or external agencies. So I'd say silos is probably the biggest blocker, fighting between sales and marketing and analytics. Working together is obviously the best course of action for these businesses to try and connect all their data silos together to form the correct information that will bring you or surface those decisions that will influence business outcomes.
Great. So what you're saying is within the agency or the company, there are different departments that collect their own data one way or another. But there's the lack of integrating all this data, bringing all this data to one place, and then now being able to, analyze and look at it as a whole to be able to now inform the next step. So be it marketing, be it the sales team, be it the operations team, that idea.
Yeah, I do think that's probably this one of them. I imagine there's plenty. I think that's probably a core one that probably brings up a lot of debate and perhaps even some conflict within teams. So integrating those teams to find that source of business outcome driven metrics or KPIs is going to unstick or undam some of the problems that these agencies and businesses are facing.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Maureen, please share your thoughts on this as well.
Okay, Nora, I'll just build on what Thomas said. Yes, agencies collect, there's a lot of silos in the data we collect. So just like you said, social media teams, they are collecting all the social media data. The ATL, the TV and outdoor are collecting sales from the client side that are collecting their data and others. So those data are not well integrated to make a decision. And that is one of the biggest issues. So Thomas has said it, I won't dwell on it more. Another one is, again, skill gaps. So you see people, our data always answers what happened and never why it happened and what to change and what needs to be done to take an effective decision. So there's always a skill gap in a TV person will come and tell you, my campaign GRP is 1,000. So what is 1,000 to the business objective? Is a GRP. Well, how does that affect the business metrics? How does that move the needle in the business angle? So, but then he has come up with a data and he has thrown it out there. It's not connecting, it's not making, and interpretation. So I've just run a data, it gives me the GRP, it gives me the reach, but there's no insight from that data. So there's a skill gap connecting the numbers. So we are busy churning out numbers and not decisions. So we always churn out a lot of numbers. Okay, TV will deliver this for me, outdoor will deliver this for me, this will deliver this for me. What's the decision then? And of course, you also have issue of having a stale data to make to form a decision in quote. So when you are using a data of past 1 month to make a decision of next, it has already happened. So what do you get from there? How do you move the needle? So, and we already wait for the campaigns or everything to end before we start giving the client, this was the result of what happened. Remember, we're always answering what happened and never the why. So we need to start connecting the why to the what happened to make an informed decision, which I believe is what we get out from here today on how we can be doing that. So I'll just leave.
Wow, yeah, that's a great insight that you've opened up the discussion to, which I think I will also just segue to the second theme, which is turning insight into action. So you've mentioned that one, there's a gap between either the skill set of someone who's who's experienced in turning numbers into practical reasons. So a lot of us are looking at what happened, and it's easy to see what happened because we can see from the numbers, but not why it happened. Was it a social influence? Was it political? Was it emotional? Was it just where the world is going to? And also you've mentioned that a lot of us are also using stale data. So we are taking too long before making a decision, so that by the time you're making the decision, probably the data has changed to a different direction, such that the insights that we're going to, come up with for implementation might be outdated or might just be wrong for that particular
Very
time.
correct.
Yes. So maybe how do we, how do we identify which insights actually matter to clients or even to the company? How do we go about, um, getting to a point where we are decision ready to, to come up with an insight or even actualize it to implementation?
Okay, when you have all those your beautiful numbers and look at that number, if it doesn't answer the question, one needle is moving or shifting. What's the connection of these numbers to the client business KPI? For us agency, most time we focus on a campaign KPI, and a campaign KPI can be reached. We start throwing out numbers, we reach 90% of the people. While the client is bleeding, the client KPI may be, I want to move sales volume from this number to this number. So if the data you have, I usually have a rule of the thumb. Use 5 seconds to look at it. If you can't pick a decision from it, discard that data. That's not the data you need to make a decision. I don't know if it's clear. So if you look at the data in 5 seconds, I'm looking at this number, I reach 80% of the persons, and then the business KPI is I want to move volume from 20% to 30%, and then you are reaching 80% of the persons. The number did not move. If the client also gives us access, because most clients also hold their data, which is also a big issue. So if the client gives access to the CRM, yeah, they have reached the 90% of this campaign and it's not moving the needle. And you can make a connect what happened that you were able to meet your campaign KPI and the business KPI did not move. Then know that the data you are looking at is the wrong data. Go and look at why these numbers could not make a change. And it could also be that there's a lot of things that happen in between. Maybe the time you are running the campaign, there's a lot of clutter going on, that the noises swallow their noise, but your matrix, your data will tell you have reached all the people. However, the effectiveness, and it can even be the creative. Maybe the creative is not communicating, is not delivering the communication it's supposed to deliver. So when you look at all those nuances and you'll be able to draw the line and the gap on why the needle did not change, then you have now answered the why, and you'll be able to inform the client to say, though this happened, we reached 80%, these are what happened, and these are the reasons why they happened. So we advise that for the next phase of the campaign, we either drop TV, entertainment, we go to the news because that's where the decision makers are, or we take this. So you see, that's why I said, if it doesn't, their data do not give you insight at 5 seconds, drop it and look for what happened.
Okay, great. So the 5 second rule, if you do not figure out, the why into the data that you're looking at, try looking at another set of data and go at it that way until you figure out the why. And the
Definitely.
whys could be a lot. The whys could be a long list.
A lot, yes.
Yeah. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Yannick, on this.
Yes, thank you. So I think I sort of agree with what has been said so far, beginning with the fact that, for me, the gap that we're seeing is like our data is used as an output and not designed as an input for a decision. So we need to reframe that. So that's number one, because otherwise, it's essentially noise. And we do have a lot of data. But the question is, okay, what is this? How is this data helping us make decisions? So if you're a consumer facing brand, right, like you want to, reach, engage, and convert, right? So fine, how do you translate your sort of campaign metrics into that, right? Conversion. And it's really how do we, and I think you mentioned insights, but it's more like how do we get the proper signals on, for example, why people are switching brand, why are they delaying purchases, why are they disengaging emotionally, and then what do we do on Monday, right? Like it's really data is meant for decision making. And so I have to be in a position to, as an agency, to use my data to advise my client on what we're going to do next on Monday, right? My client has to basically see the data or the insight that I'm providing as an input for him to take actions to achieve his KPI. And we all know what the KPIs are, right? I want to grow my sales. I want to basically maybe, reach a certain level of coverage and so on and so forth. So I think the whole supply chain has to be, I think we need to think about the whole supply chain, especially in the context of the continent. And even when we look at our data inventory, right? Not every data source is actually relevant. Not every data platform is actually relevant, right? So you really need to look at what are my data sources and are they actually even relevant for what I need to achieve? And so we talked about, website, online data, all of that, transaction data. Like all of these data is all that data is telling you about what happened in the past. When you have on top of that fragmented platform that you use across your agency, yeah, you now need to all triangulate that to sort of make sense of it, right? But the real question you need to ask yourself is if I'm dealing with a consumer-facing brand, what is my single data entry or my single data point that can give me a lot of the answers that I need, right? And so at the core of sort of your consumer market, there's the consumer, right? The consumer has a lot of your answers, right? And so for me, it's really what is the data, the single data source that is going to be the most relevant for us, for me as an agency, for my client who is serving those customers, and basically make sure that you can evolve around that. And that's again why, right? Getting all of those answers become a little easier, faster, right? Than what we need to do. The last thing I want to say is, I mean, we're seeing, because we track consumers are moving faster than brands, right? Problem,
Yeah.
right? Brands are moving slow, right? Like there needs to be, a way to sort of match the speed at which consumers are moving. But again, not every high frequency data set or data is useful, right? Like what data is actually relevant for what we want to achieve. So that's all I can say for now.
All right. What you've mentioned also, sort of moves the conversation to, how do you help teams and clients move away from dashboards to action plans? Because that time, one should be narrowed down to as fast as possible, because you're saying customers move faster than brands. So by the time you're looking at your data, you're making a decision, and then you're making the plans to implement, that needs to happen so fast. So how do you help your teams move from that to that? Yeah.
I think, and again, even that notion of dashboarding is actually a reflection of the way we look at data. We look at data as output. Yeah. Like a dashboard is not telling you what to do next. You get? So there has to be a translation of my dashboard into insight, plain English insight that I can basically use to make my next move. And so again, what are the questions that you're trying to answer, right? I'm trying to answer, am I losing? Is this campaign successful? And am I expecting an uptake in this particular product? Am I losing momentum with these particular segments? And what do I do about it? Like, so as you even build dashboard, and again, if you think about an agency and the whole supply chain, I'm not talking about dashboard that are given to you by a platform. So if you think about it, your dashboard should be driven by the goal that your client is trying to basically, right? So if you think about each client being specific, right? If I'm an agency and I have 10 clients, I probably have 10 dashboards. None of them will be similar, by the way, right? And so again, going back to my early comment about data sources, we have platforms that are giving us preset dashboards. Yeah, we have all these metrics, they show up. on time, on real time, but they don't answer our questions, right? But how do we again move from that to plain English? This is what's happening, right? And this is what we're going to do next. Because at the end of the day, like your client, your stakeholders, that's really what they want, right? Like, what am I going to do with this? So what do you suggest I do next? Like, do we extend the campaign? Do we reduce the campaign? Do we focus on on another segment? Do we, and so on and so forth? And literally plain English, right? And so moving away from
Yeah.
just giving numbers, but story. And because story is what drives change. Data
Yeah.
is just data, but you need to basically wrap it up in story and intelligence.
Yeah, you need to be able to give a storyline, or translate the data into something that one management can understand, and give them the information on what they need to know to do next and how fast they need to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas, please share your thoughts, if you have additional thoughts on how teams can do this within the clients, teams.
I believe teams are currently, they get that analysis paralysis. They see all this data and they don't know what to do with it, and they kind of freeze. And there's two options, and I think it addresses that skills gap, is what to do with all that data that we see on a regular basis in all these dashboards. And I think what a lot of agencies and teams are doing at the moment is they are kind of stacking all those small little changes. So they see one small metric and they say, okay, if we move that, we might move something. And hopefully if we stack enough of those small changes, we'll shift that needle 1 or 2%. That's the low risk, low accountability kind of route that I find a lot of agencies and teams are implementing, purely through maybe the fear of accountability, KPI achievement, and maybe expectation through clients. However, what we really want to see is those insights surfaced from that big data to drive the big gains. And I think that's what a lot of teams are missing. So in order to do that, I do believe there's a certain amount of risk that both the agency and the client must be willing to take in order to make those changes. And I think you've got to live in reality, and the clients as well as the businesses must also understand that, because if you want to make big swings, you can get big gains. But there is always the safe alternative of stacking small gains and small wins iteratively to lead to a larger outcome. So I think that must be brought to the table on both sides, which also leads to being able to test thoroughly changes and hypotheses on what might happen, and maybe having open discussions with clients and agencies on the two routes to success that they can take depending on their risk appetite.
Right. Would you say that's how agencies can better link data insights to performance outcomes? So performance in terms of revenue, retention, efficiency, because there's that, as you mentioned, there's that risk of, one, on the agency side, you have KPIs to meet, you have, you have a lot to deliver to the client, but then there's a fear of having that open discussion of what we set out to do seems, or rather we'll have to change what we set out to do because of this, and this, and it may affect this and this and this, but at the end of the day, it will be of benefit to the company, to the brand. So would you say that is maybe one way agencies can go about linking the data insights to performance and outcomes?
Agreed. And I think Yannick and Maureen have both mentioned this, is having those business outcomes front and center always. I don't think they're going to be interested in all the stacking of small wins and all the rest. If it moved the needle, they'll be happy. They might not even ask about the details, but those questions come up as soon as targets start dropping. So any insight, if it doesn't influence business outcome, it's not an insight. It's just data analysis. So to get out of that, maybe we do need to start stacking all those small wins or those small gains to try and see where the insight can actually be surfaced. So using that, I do think that a lot of the time, again, back to segmented data, we don't have a full funnel visualization of a consumer's journey, whether it's a lead for a service business or e-commerce might be a bit simpler to track. But once again, integration between your data platforms will assist with your forecasting. Otherwise, as we said, that's the future goal that we're trying to achieve. And looking at historical performance isn't usually the best way. It's what has happened. It doesn't tell you what to do next on Monday. But an integrated solution is more likely to have better forecasting, and always keep those business outcomes, revenue, retention, front and center, and all those goals.
Yeah. I think Maureen has also said that there's also a bit of a challenge with brands being open with some of the data that they have, especially if it's, you're just getting into the start of the campaign or just getting into the initial business with them. So there's also that challenge. And I think now we've set the basis of, where we are in 2026 as agencies, the kind of data that we collect from different platforms, the mindset that we should have as we look at the data that we have and how we can practically use them to start informing business decisions. So I'd like to move into now the tools and the tech and the capacity building, because skills is a huge thing. So this you need to have someone who actually knows how to look at data and transform it into that makes sense to a business. So some of the tools and platforms that are genuinely enabling better decision making, and not just for reporting. I think a lot of the teams are using these platforms, these dashboards that are being offered as a way to report, but then not to make decisions. So which tools would you recommend or you using, and how can we go about that?
Nora, is the question directed to me?
Yes,
Because your network got a little bit. No. Okay. So for the tools, like we have mentioned them severally, you will look at a tool, a dashboard that can harmonize all data touch points. And just like Yannick said, if you have 10 clients, you will want to build 10 dashboards, because each client, each business have their own unique KPI they want to solve. So we need to kind of get tools. And like also mentioned initially, client also needs to be willing, because the sales numbers, the marketing metrics also needs to come from there. So any tool that can harmonize all data touch points and be able to check what happened, what moved the needle, and what didn't move the needle is the tool. So there's quite a lot. I'm not sure I'll be able to be, maybe Yannick that is already in the tools will be able to advise. I'm not sure I'll be able to advise a particular tool, but there's quite a lot of tools. The marketing CRM, the clients use, that can be used, but any tool that can be able for you to look at, not just as a report, but as a decision. So all touch points, there's a client some of the clients we work graciously gives us access to their tools, to their back end. So both the research, the brand health is uploaded, all the sales figures uploaded, whatever campaigns that happen within the period is also uploaded from our own side. So as you're uploading it, you can be able to say, okay, there was a spike in sale in this region this month. What did we do differently in those regions? And we can be able to take a decision, okay, this is what we did that sparked this sale. Do we continue on that line, or do we do some retweak for the channels that didn't deliver? So their clients, is about 2 or 3 clients we work, always have their own specialized tools that always give us from the marketing communication agents access to upload whatever happened, and everybody sees and look at the results and the decision is taken. Maybe Yannick, you can also help if you want to point out some of the tools.
Yeah, no problem. So I think when you think about tools, and again, I always want to go back to, like, if you think about your supply chain, and so what are you trying to achieve with each of those tools, right? So, and then I'm gonna split into two. You've got, when you live in the digital space, yeah, you have tools. when you live in the real world, you need to have other tools, right? Because you're not capturing the same thing. Now we have the tendency and agency to think we all live in a digital world, but in Africa, we are not. We're still majority living in the real world. Yeah. So when you think about tools, you have to split them into two. Of course, in the digital space, when you look at activations, things like that, you've got your Google, your Meta, all of those stacks that allows you to basically get metrics around that. But again, it's like what's what's working and what do you need to change, right? In the real world, you can still capture those, but you have to do it manually, right? So we have teams going, activations, in markets, all of that. You have to be mindful that that data is super important and it has to come back to you, right? If you're an agency. Then you get into your audience. So how do you understand sort of your audience and all of that? So what are some of the different tools? And again, when you live in the digital world, of course, your big platforms will give you information about audiences as well at the same time. But then when you live in the real world, that's where you have to, maybe run surveys and have capabilities to have, high frequency, surveys coming your way. So it could be in-house or it could be, you can outsource, right? This is one of the things that, for example, we do, a lot for our clients. Then when it comes to decisions and sort of foresight, um, and again, those, online tools, I guess you can pretty much move everything online once you've collected the data. And then you have the likes of, your Power BI, your Tableau, but you can also have your own sort of manual tool. And that's where capability building becomes important. So you mentioned earlier about did I think honestly with the interactions and the work we do with agency and brand, one of the biggest capability gap in companies today is actually that data analysis translating into insight capability within companies, right? Like it's definitely something that I think companies should basically work because yes, you can have all of these tools, but if you don't have that, capability, then you get into the data paralysis and I don't know what to do. But again, if you look at all of these, like it should follow the same sort of patterns, eh? Like how these tools should allow me to, get data, extract the insight, like, and then translate that into decisions. And that's where AI now becomes, super, super interesting as well, because you can literally have all of that and have AI agents helping you now with, the translation into like the so what, right? Of course, you have to review, you have to basically contextualize it for the business, for your particular market. But they are, a stack of tool. But you really need to have a strategy in place to be able to decide which one to use. And that's very, very important. None of this it works if you do not have your whole supply chain sort of figured out, what is relevant data, what is not relevant data, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the tools that I can mention. And of course, you can use our own tool.
Yeah. What you've mentioned about, digital tools versus, actually going out there to look for,
Mhm.
the data manually, it goes back to, even the different types of data. There's qualitative data which you can easily analyze, but then there's a co no, there's a quantitative data which you can easily, do your math plus minus here there,
Yeah.
and get your insight, rather get your data. And then there's a qualitative, how to also handle such data, such, like paragraphs of reviews
Yeah.
and feedback. Also, that also really needs to be taken into account, so that you're not putting more attention to the quantitative data just because it might be easy, then forgetting the actual text that someone sent as a review, a whole paragraph, even
Abs-
on Google Skills.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think, yeah, what you've mentioned, looking at all the different ways you can gather data, and also what Maureen has mentioned, I think the tools that will also work are tools that you can easily input all the data that you can that you get from different platforms, then
Mhm.
analyze from. If it's easy to analyze from one tool, even better. but then just paying attention to whether the tools that you're using are, are giving you either one can you can feed in more information, or even just be able to get as much insights or analysis from that tool itself.
Yeah.
You've mentioned AI agents. I've seen a question on AI, but I think I want to pause on that so that anything AI can be, at the last
No
section.
problem.
What we can also talk about is now because of skills. So there's tools, but then without these tools, the tools can be there, but then if you don't have the skill set to use them, then they're basically not as important. So how do agencies, I think Yannick, you can go first, and then I'll let Thomas share his insights on how agencies can build internal data literacy across, the strategy teams, creatives,
Yeah.
account teams, and do they need to improve the literacy of in the team
Yeah.
that's already existing, or should agencies now start thinking about, a data analysis, team that can easily look at the data, do it fast, and bring in insights on a very, like, churn it out as fast as possible?
So I think when I talk about capacity building, and I'm sure probably people are saying, well, I have my Google Analytics certificate, I have my Meta, certificate, I'm training. That is not what I'm talking about. You get a lot of that training on how to use platforms and different platforms. That is not the training I'm talking about. The training I'm talking about is how do you, as an agency, understand your customer need, and how do you translate what is your campaign into tangible outcome for that customers. Again, that whole sort of insight generation, decision-making support is, for me, the skills that needs to be. Because if you don't, and I'm going to separate that from, again, using those, different tech tools and all of that. Because the problem we have now is that, yes, we are trained on using all of these tools, but how do we translate that into what is actually useful for our clients, which is data analysis, actually understanding, customer need data analysis, and then translating that into story and sort of insights. And so for me, that's the key. And that, takes, I guess, a different set of, skills and capability. And for me, it is as simple as, having your team, knowing how to analyze small data set, unlock insights with small data set, having your team really on a frequent basis, translating data into tangible insights for customers, unpacking insights that, when we talk about the so what, unpacking the insight, shaping those stories, making sure that these stories are relevant for the clients. And it's not the client who's trying to understand what you mean, right? Like, so you show up and the client is the one who's trying to understand now what you mean. That shouldn't be the case. It should be the client should feel like you understand his business so much that he doesn't have to do any translation, right? Like, as you speak to him, you're speaking like you've been part of the team. And so that, to me, that is the ultimate, the missing piece in capacity building that I'm seeing. And again, to do that, it takes training, it takes, practice, whether it's in the company or maybe taking some outside courses. But that is for me the big one. So I'll let the other panelists, add.
Yeah, Nora, sorry, before Thomas comes on, I also want to add something that for agencies, you will be doing yourself so much disservice if you are just having a group of people to say, this are our data analysts that drops insights from data. Others are just to run data and pass to them. So it would be good if at every point, everybody, for whatever you are doing, you know how to come up or make out an insight from your work. So for a media buyer should be able to know whatever the campaign he put up there, the choice of programming that you choose, you should be able to have an insight on what it will happen to the client business. And just like Yannick said, you need to be at every point, you need to be talking to the client like you understand them, you use their language, the CFOs and the CMOs will love it that you understand their pain, and this is the way to address it. Not no this. So those kind of things will actually make the agency stand out. So everybody in the agency, whether it's an account person, whether it's a creative, whether social media, whether digital, should be able to draw insight from whatever database or tools they are using, and not just a particular group called data analyst in the agency. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you for that, Maureen. That's important, so that every touch point in the they can easily work that they're doing, how the work that they know that this they can work with two creatives they give you to run an A/B test. This is what has one creative has brought in. This is what the other has brought in, and what can we think about that? So I think it is important for everyone in the agency to at least have that analytical mindset, so that it informs everything else that they do. If it's creating a design, they know they can use previous data to inform the next designs that they create. Yes. Thomas, what do you think on your end?
I agree with my panelists. I definitely think that literacy isn't about the tools that we have available to us. We need to ask tougher questions of our data. And I think that's where it comes in. To separate the noise from the signal is going to be probably the most important things we can teach. Teach being the operative word. This is not something that you can look at, 10 or 20 metrics and make a decision upon. Coming into it, people aren't going to understand any of this stuff. So leadership, I believe, or courses, or bringing in a consultant to advise on this type of decision making, especially for mid to juniors, is going to be a requirement if you don't have that capacity internally. So we don't want to be showing more dashboards, more data to junior to mids that are looking to climb the ladder. They need to ask the right questions of their data. I think with those questions, it kind of gives the teams a framework or guardrails to kind of sift out the stuff that's going to create noise with them. And I think lastly is, because we are using forecasting and want to think about the future, we are going to be reacting on incomplete data, on information that is going to have, as mentioned, a certain amount of risk associated with it. So while we've got the support of leadership and, again, the continued use of AI to help us make these decisions, I believe we can start minimizing our risk with the leadership and AI guidance that we can do with smaller sets of data to make sure that we get the best outcome possible.
Okay, thank you for that. My next question was to be, what capabilities should agencies prioritize building in 2026? But just out of the nature of this conversation, it is one year, what we've mentioned, like ensure that everyone in your team can be equipped with or trained into thinking about things analytically, so that it all sums up into the bigger question of the type of data we can use, the right data we can use, and how everyone can bring in their insight here and there to build a larger, list of insights that you can present to the management or to the brand, to the client, and they easily understand what you as an agency are asking them to do, or rather are seeking approval for them, for you guys to implement. So I think the last section now that I want us to talk about is now the future of data in African agencies. And then I think we can also now talk about AI and how we can, bring it into the agency, and how it will be able, AI agents will be able to work alongside us, and, for the future and beyond. So first question will be, what will differentiate data mature agencies from the rest in the next 2 to 3 years? So what will differentiate your data mature agencies from the rest from the rest in the next 2 years? I think the first one is, one, if everyone in your team is well equipped on how to think analytically, is trained on how to look at the work that they do from an analytical point, that already is setting you as an agency ahead of the others. Yeah, so please share any other if you have more to share.
So maybe I can start, and I want to kind of go back to the capability we talked about earlier, sort of summarize it quickly in my mind. So I think the number one, if I look at 2026 capability, skill, decisions intelligence, not just analytics, right? Like signal interpretation. So basically knowing what matters early. And then that commercial, storytelling, which is you translate the data into like narrative that clients can act on. Three things, right? Now, moving on to if I think about the future and if I think about like your mature agency, which you've seen already, if you see the big boys, I think you see a lot of that. They move faster from insight to action, right? Again, we're not even talking about data, but like insight to sort of action. In the context of the continent, very important, even in the context of AI, using local contextual data. Yeah, very, very important. And again, I think the last thing for me is when you do those two things, the confidence you have in making recommendation and not just observation. I think we need to take a stand. We have to have a point of view. I think Thomas mentioned that earlier, accountability and all of that. I think accountability means you also have to be confident in your point of view as an agency, and in recommendation that you're making. Because ultimately, our clients are looking for clarity generally, right? So we clutter to all this noise to give them clarity in terms of what to do. So to me, these are the three things I think mature agency in the next 2-3 years will do. Now, you see, I'm not talking about AI here, but for me, it's not about the tech, right? But more about like what are we trying to achieve. Then you can see AI coming and playing its role in all of these elements. But for me, that's clarity. We unclutter the noise of all of this data to bring clarity ultimately for our clients.
All right, thank you, Yannick. Yes, Maureen, please go ahead.
All right. So for me, in addition to what Yannick said, is that agencies nowadays, CFOs are having more powers than the CMOs. And you just have to learn how to speak the CFO language and understand what the CFO language is, impact, ROI on the business. So, and if you understand that, you know that you don't come, the days are gone when you go to a pitch, is the CMOs or marketing directors and the marketers are seated on the GS. Now, the CFOs are there, they're all there seated and they're just looking at financials. They're not listening to the 100 slides of data you have to present. What they want at the end is that by doing this and this and this will be the business metrics it will translate to. So speak the CFO language, and of course, just like Yannick said, speed of learning, speed of decision, speed of turning that insight into decision. Now this work well with agencies and clients. The agencies must have that speed to make that decision, be confident in that decision. Most times, agencies think the client have all the data. So when they go to present, they're always afraid somehow. Am I sure what I'm trying to say? You need to look at your numbers very well. You need to make an insight out of it. I need to be confident to deliver and to say to the client, this is the insight and this is where we need to move first. So the client also needs to cooperate to take that decision immediately. And of course, you just have to adopt local intelligence as well. Everything is also, because Yannick mentioned earlier, consumers are even moving faster than the brand. And that is the truth everywhere. I was thinking it's just Nigeria, not knowing it's across. they are moving faster. So your local intelligence also comes in, because most times the data you have with you have the data now and what is currently happening may not be aligning. So your local intelligence as well need to come there, and that also leads you being confident in talking. So when you have all this, is of course you just keep enhancing the skill, keep making sure that you are like a consultant to the client and not just a vendor. So that's the way that you can actually be separated, and client will always call you at any time to say we're having this business issue.
Hello.
Hello. I think
I
we've
think we
lost
lost.
Maureen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you're back.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that's what I can just contribute on that for now.
Great. Thank you so much, Maureen. Thomas, I think you can close that section off for us.
I agree again with my panelists here. I think speed is going to be it. And I think speed is achieved through alignment, as Maureen said, through the different teams within an agency, whether it's performance, data, etc. So if we can provide those guardrails and what we might
Yeah.
call, how to design our decisions a little bit better, that will align our teams to work within the same framework and therefore get the speed to decision much, much faster. So decision design, decision governance will speed up the debates, internal data decisions that each team will have to make to get to that last decision that goes off to clients. So yeah, alignment within guardrails of how we're going to make that decision, and it's governed equally for everybody. That's going to speed up everything that goes back to clients.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. So last but not the least is, what advice would you give agencies starting to professionalize their data and performance offering? So yeah, in terms of, presenting data, one, you have to learn the language of, is it the CMO, is it the CFO, is it the CEO? You need to learn how to not just present data, but to tell a story, and also share the, what you need them to do. And then also just encourage the brands to, act on things fast, because things are changing as fast as every other day. So what advice would you give agencies starting to professionalize their data and performance offering?
So I think in the line of what we've been talking about, which is really how quickly can you get to providing clarity and support decisions. I would say you have to start with that. Build decisions. Don't build dashboards, for the sake of, sophistications and uh, buzz tech words. Build really insight systems, right? Around, and it doesn't matter if whether it's digital or non-digital, it's the same. It's an insight system around your client's problem, right? And so understanding that, very well, thinking about the decisions, recurring decisions, again, if it's a campaign, if it's a bigger product launch, but what are some of those decisions that your clients are going to take based on what you're providing? And then measurable outcomes, right? And so I think the conversation around, client data, sharing their sales, I'm sure if we maybe at the beginning, start talking about these measurable outcomes and we start talking about sales, as one thing that we want to be able to help or support, maybe they'll give us indications of that, right? Because now we basically saying, okay, these are the KPIs we actually want to move the dial on. And then from there you can pretty much scale. So I think you can start small, and then use what works. It's not about complexity. I think it's about our customers, our consumers are not complex. They're very frugal in what they do and how they do. So we can do the same, as sort of agency. So that'll be my sort of advice. Start small and then, but have those key elements: problems, decisions, outcome. Thank you.
Problems, decisions.
All right.
Okay.
So let me just also advise that be very, very clear. Start with business objective. Be very clear on the KPI. Be very clear on the KPI. Train the teams on interpretations and not just collecting data. Just know that data is not all about all the numbers in the slides. Lay your data, let whatever information you put out there be very clear. Let it have the clarity, and also let it be relevant to the business KPI, and let it have a commercial impact. If you can connect these three dots, very clear on the business KPI, the skills, train up the people in their teams, not just to extract data, but also interpret, and let whatever that comes out have a clarity, and let it be relevant to the business KPI at the end to translate to the commercial impact. Once you connect these three dots, you'll be good. One step at a time, you build it's not about building the tools first. One step at a time, you have enough to build your tools and your dashboards.
Perfect. Thanks, Maureen. Great. Thomas, do you have any addition to that section?
2 points. Again, agree with my panelists here. I think starting small to prove concepts is very powerful. I think, again, small wins compound. They build trust with teams and other partners. So I think that's probably one of the main ones. Start small to prove concepts. I think another one is, again, avoid the trap of producing too much data in dashboards and things like that. Quality trumps quantity when it comes to business outcomes and data. So try to avoid producing too much stuff, too much noise. I think that's also a big one. And then bringing it back to the Africa continent as a whole. And when I think of first party data, I'm thinking of form submissions on a website, but it's on the ground surveys. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of research written that the human signals that we might be forgetting on the ground, the formal feedback, the reviews that people talk about, the word of mouth, which hasn't really been brought up here in the digital space. That's what really gives the best meaning to big data, is when you've got that person or that human touch at the end of it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Yannick, Maureen, and Thomas. So before we close off, for the next 5 minutes, I want to just address 2 questions that have been asked. So the first one was from Deborah at Zilojo. So the question was, what kind of data should agencies pay attention to create content that maximizes follower growth? So what kind of data should agencies pay attention to create content that maximizes follower growth?
So, I mean, it depends on. I'll take a stab at it. It depends on your customers. So if we're talking about consumer-facing brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So consumer-facing brand, then of course you need consumer data. In fact, I would argue most of the brand we work for are probably consumer-facing brand in some degree. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the data that you need. And so how do you get it? You can get it through, survey, as Thomas was mentioning. You can get it, online, submissions, things like that. But that's what you need. I mean, everything else, in my mind, is secondary data that should always bring you back to the consumer. Yeah. So we have and I'll give you an example to illustrate that. If you want to understand purchase decisions, or like purchase like a share of wallet, you can go out there and basically get data at different point of sales digitally, right? But you're going to quickly realize that for you to actually derive the wallet, which means what are people buying on a regular basis, right? you won't be able to capture that because some of it is not formal, some of this is not digital. I would even argue in Africa, the majority is not. So you can't just use those digital data points to get that information. But you can ask people what they buy every month, right? You're more likely to get an accurate wallet by going directly to consumer and saying, by the way, what are you buying? Fine. They may not remember everything, but if you do it over time and consistently, with a certain level of probability, you will be able to get what the wallet is. And that's what I mean. So ultimately, in a market like ours, I would default to consumer data now if you deal with consumer facing brand.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so I just want to add to what Thomas said. You've collected the first data of the consumer-facing brand, so that's your primary source. But you can have those data, you can have those consumer, and then it doesn't convert to what you are looking for, because I believe this question is looking for how to grow his or her followers in the social media page. So you need to also go deeper to understand those consumer-facing brand. What kind of content do they want to consume? Or do they love consuming? You have to also understand the tone of the content, the style of the content. Is it a long content, or is it a video content, or is it a shorter messaging content? And also understand their style. So if you're able to uncover, because the whys in understanding a consumer is always the headache, but once you crack the why, once you understand the why, I can tell you are just on a roller coaster drive. So once you get this why and you tailor your content towards that angle, you will see your followers and your pages grow. So that's what I just want to add to it.
Thank you.
That's perfect.
I'd like to add a quick one on that. Maybe a quick research-based answer is look at your competitors. There's a lot of tools out there that allow for free analysis, Meta Ads library, the equivalent of the Google Ads library, that shows you all your competitor ads that have been running, and even their start dates. So you could, see if a competitor's been running a singular ad for a relatively long time, that it's performance behind it, and then make those decisions yourself if you align with that brand and that value, etc. And then above all else is look out for engagement. I think if you've got an engaging piece of content, you're going to get growth eventually.
Yes, great. Last but not least, now this is now for AI. So it's morning all. This is from Sarah, sorry. Question I have is, how do you see AI changing the insight process? Will it replace human strategists or elevate them? So how do you see AI changing the insight process of data, and will it replace human strategists or elevate them?
Let me just start, then Thomas and Yannick can add up to it. Yes,
Okay.
AI integration is good in our work. Remember, in all that we said, you can have a lot of data, but there's also some cultural and local nuances to your data. So the AI cannot totally replace. AI can give you the speed of the analysis, but making an insight out of your data, out of your numbers, out of your dashboard, most of them, just like Yanni keeps saying, look at your numbers and then tell a story. Most of those stories and those connections has to come from you with your full knowledge, understanding of the culture, the context, the background of what the campaign or the business objective we are looking at is. So that's the angle I just want to come. So Thomas and Yannick can add to the rest.
So I think AI definitely has the potential to sort of improve the insight generation, provided, and I'm going to put some caveat and agreeing with Maureen there, that it is the right data, the right model, right? So we have to be aware that a lot of our training data today in all of these AI model is not African data. And so that's a very big caveat. So what it means is that if you can feed your data to the AI and then sort of have data analyze and all of that, even better. So you still have to go and get that data pretty much, especially in Africa. Now, what's amazing about AI is that we as humans, we're very good at analyzing 2, 3 dimensions. So if I give you a table, analyze this, but the moment you get to like 4, 5 dimensions, we're not really good at it. And so AI is very powerful at basically making that very quick, very fast, which means it can really elevate your insights. And truly, we've seen this with some of our clients, really, really elevate your insight to another level. I think it does not, right? It does not remove the fact that ultimately you as a human you are ultimately accountable for it, which means when I have a recommendation or where I have an analysis from AI, as Maurice was mentioning, I always need to put my African hat, my understanding of the business, my understanding of what they're trying to achieve, to make sure that it's aligned, right? Like AI may not be able to do all of that for you because ultimately you are accountable, right? And that's the key here is that it's for you to present, it's for you to recommend, it's for you to have the confidence in what you're recommending. But definitely, I think it's changing a lot. The speed definitely is it's a big factor. And I think for me, if we do it well, you may be in a world where speed and quality now can go together, right?
Yeah.
And so that's very exciting, at least in
I'll
our space.
agree. I'll agree completely there that the AI is only as good as its training,
Yeah.
and it's still growing. It's changing all the time. There is a bit of a battle for AI supremacy going on at the moment, and we're going to see a lot of changes come into play at this moment in time. And it's turned hours into seconds in terms of research. So I think we're all using AI extensively these days, but without those skills to identify it or those guardrails. So I think, again, telling and asking harsh truths of your AI is going to be incredibly important, because I think we're seeing lots of data output and no outcomes when it comes to that. I'm seeing juniors not understanding the results that appear after their singular question that shows up. They don't know how to ask the right questions of their data. So hopefully with some experience in our team members and our junior colleagues, we're going to guide them on that, because at this point in time, without internal knowledge of the business or your clients, that data is more likely to do harm than good. So treat it wisely and it'll take care of you, and always ask the tough questions of your AI.
Totally agree.
Brilliant, brilliant. And that brings us to the end of our session today. I want to thank you, Yannick, thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Thomas, for dedicating your time today to take us through, these sort of themes that we were going through today, and also sharing your knowledge of your experience, years of experience, and also your current what you do on a daily basis within your teams. We thank you so much, and also want to thank the attendees for joining and at least interacting with us in the section and also on the comments. There's a lot of thank yous to the panelists. There's a comment of these were great insights and thank you. And yeah, this was a great webinar. So just a few key takeaways. Yes, there's also a quick poll question that you'll see on your side. So yeah, key takeaways is one, there's a need to integrate all the data that we have, that the teams are collecting from different platforms, different avenues, that being the different departments in your agency. There's also a need to upskill or even just ensure that everyone within the team, one or another, knows how to generate their insights from what they're doing. May it be the media buying team, it being the creative teams, even the account management team, the BD as well. There's a need to ensure that everyone in your team knows how to look at the data that they have, and also how to generate insights from that, and also understanding your clients' business goals. I think that's the first point to note, so that everything else, all the data that you'll be looking at, the insights that you'll be developing at the end of the day, will be of business benefit to your clients. Outside of that, there's a need to separate the noise from the signal. So ensure that you're looking at the right data. I've heard of the 5-second rule. If you're looking at the data for 5 seconds and it's not giving you anything, it's not sparking an idea or an insight, maybe that's the wrong data that you're looking at, and go look at another data. And also involve everyone in your team so that everyone can easily look at things from different point of views. And again, we are in Africa, so there's cultural nuances, different things that someone else who's not based in Africa, or who doesn't know how the African market and the audience, react to different things, might not know about. So it also brings in the element of, personal knowledge, of looking at where the world is going, the different insights, and also just knowing how to move around that. And last but not least, there are different tools that we can use at the end of the day, but ensure that, one, you're using the right tools and you're looking at the right data that will, ensure that you're telling the right story, and that you're, of course, again, benefit to the clients that want to work with you. I think with that said, I want to say thank you to everyone as we close this off. This was great. Please check out the PAAN website. We have more webinars coming up. So we'll be, of course, letting everyone know on our social media pages, on the website. So please follow and keep track, and we'll have more sessions like this from well-knowledge people who will be able to share, one or two things that we can take and implement on our side. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week and month of February.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nora.
Everyone,
Thank
thank you for joining.
Yannick, nice meeting you. Thomas, nice meeting you. Hope we'll connect after. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.